Hey everybody, Bob Chick back with Sugar Sean Ray, another edition of the Voice of Bodybuilding. And Sean, you're probably asking yourself, geez, Bob, where can I get myself some egg whites this month?
Yes, I was going to ask you that just as I looked at those fat little cheeks. Go ahead.
How about that? It is Christmas in July, brother. Big shout
Yes,
out to
protein.
Mac, Egg Whites International. You'll notice this one's empty. That means I got more coming on the way. And this thing here, my friend, is the key, the pump. The Chick Pump, named after myself, as I'm the one who came up with it. And 1 gallon of pure egg whites, brother. They got a huge special going on. So for all our bodybuilding people, you're always asking for tips and things and stuff. Tell you what, I will throw in myself some free stuff. You want a shirt, a tank top. They've got men's and women's stuff like that. Get yourself some egg whites. Mac will throw in something for free. Just tell them Bob and Sean sent you. Get yourself some egg whites from eggwhitesint.com. Sean, how's that sound? You getting enough protein in, bro?
No rotten eggs there, bro.
No. I know.
Speaking of rotten eggs,
Speaking of, yeah, this is so we got some good stuff this week, which we're going to get right into. First and foremost, I am off tomorrow to Chicago. It is the Chicago Pro once again. Unfortunately, Sean, no men's open this year in Chicago. They got everything but.
well, that's a start in the right direction. I personally am of the
Right.
belief that there's way too many pro shows, actually. I think there should be fewer pro shows, more prize money. That's just where I come from. So that won't be missed. But we did have some great Chicago Pro champions. If I'm not mistaken, Akeem Williams won that one time. Did Nick Walker win that, or was it Brett Wilkins? One
I
of
think
those
that was
guys won.
Brett Wilkins. Yeah. Nick's a
It was in
perennial at the
Atlanta.
New York Pro.
Yeah, but they did a great job with that show. Unfortunately, um, there are too many shows. I'm with that whole camp when they say there's too many shows, or maybe I should say there's too many Olympia qualifying shows, but I don't know what that solution is. That's a whole nother can of worms, but it certainly will make the weekend go faster. The problem with some of those shows disappearing is that it's not tragic. Some of these promoters work very hard. You have to pay the sanction fee, come up with the prize money, and not very many athletes show up. And that's really the diss on the promoter. That's really the disconnect with the expectation that the athletes want to compete with frequency. So getting rid of a show or two, it's not going to be missed.
Well, it's interesting you say that because there are categories like women's bodybuilding. At last report, there was only 6 competitors at the Chicago Pro. Now, this is an Olympia qualifying event, and we give away more pro cards than ever at this point in time in this industry. So it's a little bit concerning. And it's just not the women's bodybuilding. I'm just using that because that's current and that's now. There has been shows, men's shows throughout the years, Sean, that were not exactly stacked when it came to numbers. And that's a little concerning. And I get what you're saying about maybe there could be less shows and more money. We've gone over that, ad nauseum, of course, of which is the direct course. But all that aside, you have to look at what is the problem when you have people turning pro in record numbers, but not actually competing as professionals.
Well, that's the disconnect the federation's going to have to wrap their arms around. Because look, either you're paying the NPC or you're paying the IFBB Pro League. One of the two, the check pretty much winds up in the same bank account. Now, are the promoters getting help with respect to the expectation of athlete participation on the pro league level? That's an issue because there is no help. If I decided to put on a pro show in Hawaii and got a free sanction fee for open men's bodybuilding, I'd probably politely decline because I wouldn't know what those numbers look like for the pro bodybuilder traveling to Hawaii, which if you're in New York, it's like traveling further than Europe. So some
Yep.
of these, the athletes aren't doing themselves a favor, but I think it's a federational issue as to having these athletes sign up early because it's a surprise to the promoters when 3 pros show up and you have the equal prize money as another pro show. For example, the New York Pro has never been short of athletes. However, the women's bodybuilding has been very anemic, and yet the women bodybuilders complain about the women's prize money. Well, we're giving you opportunity to compete. You're not showing up to compete, so these shows are going to disappear. I think when you have a show with less than 10 competitors, it's on life support. So I personally wouldn't want to put on a pro event if I didn't have at least 10 competitors because that's the magic number.
Well, times are changing, and clearly there's some different things at play here, Sean, that we continue to kind of delve into and look into. But the bottom line is the times have changed. We were just talking the other day, our good friend Milos loves to debate and put some things out there, and he's been on this kick with the symmetry round and the posing round. And we'll get into that a little bit more in depth later. But here's the bottom line, right? Like I've said for years, look, you want to get good posing routines, you want guys to put some effort and some stock into it, put money on it. Now, we have had shows that have had money on it, good money. $10,000 at the Arnold for the Best Poser Award. And quite frankly, neither one of us really saw anything in those 12 routines. This is over the past 2, 3, 4 years. Even with $10,000 on the line, it doesn't seem like the guys today, and we're primarily talking about open, really give a crap.
Well, I'm going to agree with Milo Sarchev, and this is a direct quote. There's nothing for me when it comes to free posing. So why have it? What we should do with the free posing round is monetize it. And for those that think they can win the prize money, go do your routine. If you
But
don't
wait a
think
minute,
you can
I
win
just
the,
said.
wait. Let me finish my thought. If you think you can win the posing round, participate. If you don't, there's no reason to see it. And I'll tell you why. You had a very close show at the Pittsburgh Pro. It did not come down to who had a better posing routine. It came down to comparisons. So that told me that the winner and the loser of that show is only being judged based on their comparisons. So the posing round, it's not even entertainment, Bob. So if it's not even entertainment, I don't need you to come out and do what I just saw you did at the prejudging, which is hit your compulsory poses to some background noise. We've already seen you do the compulsory poses. If you're not interested in doing your free posing round on a competitive level for the prize money we're putting up, then sit it out. Let the guys vie for that prize money and that
That's it.
award so they have the bragging rights to winning the posing round, which would be then scored, which would then also be monetized. But if you know you can't pose, if you know that the free posing round is not your forte, sit it out. Because I saw you do your mandatories in the compulsories when the judges stood you next to each other. I don't need to see you go out, lumber through some lazy music with a half-assed effort, knowing that you're not even close to actually competing for the best poser award. So I'm with Milos. I am waiting for that pose down so that we can get to the final placements because there's nothing for me watching the free posing round. And if there's nothing for me watching the free posing round, call me when it's coming down to the money round when they're doing the awards.
So, if I'm catching you right, what you're contesting is the actual viability of even having the posing round.
It's not necessary for half. It's
That's
not necessary for at least half of the pros competing in open men's bodybuilding. I think it's very viable in the classic physique. They know
yes,
the importance and the relevance of
correct.
displaying their body professionally, competitively, and they elevate. In the men's open, it is a glorified posing routine that's made up on the spot with background noise, and they can give two shits about entertainment, choreography, commitment, and the idea that 20 years down the road, someone would go to YouTube to look at their posing routine. I'm blessed with the good fortune of coming up where everyone cared about their posing routines. I can actually go back and look at my work 20 years ago and say, I'm so glad I put forth an effort because there's young kids today learning from me 20 years later. Of which athlete competing today would you go back 20 years from now and look at their routine and
Right.
think that there's going to be some type of inspiration? I could probably name two.
And they're
And our
both in
reigning,
classic.
well, yeah, they are. Along with our reigning defending Mr. Olympia, I think he should get some high marks because he at least tries and does put a little bit of effort into it. But beyond the champion, I'm not entertained. I'm not emotionally moved. And I can't tell you one song that anyone posed to you last year, and I was sitting in the front row.
Well, I tell you what might evolve because as we're talking about this, and I just said there's $10,000 on the line at the Arnold, and we don't see any good routines, even with $10,000 on the line. So that tells us that they're really just not interested in putting together any type of routine, any effort as it would be for even $10,000. So maybe you're right. And maybe I can see a time in the future, Sean, where instead of having the individual routines, we do what we kind of used to do with the guys who didn't make the cut. And maybe there's just some rolling music and the guys keep coming out. You know, they hit 2, 3 poses and they keep going just to give a look to the audience. Maybe that's the halfway here. And let's not waste our time with an hour, hour and a half worth of routines that, like you said, are very forgettable.
Well, don't be surprised if half of the athletes out there say, I agree with you. So before the federation starts getting upset that
You're
we're
right.
calling for a cancellation of the posing round, maybe they should take a poll of the athletes because based on the appearance of effort or lack thereof, they don't care. So if they don't care, why are you making us, the fans, suffer through a half-assed routine that the athlete doesn't want to do anyway? So if I know my fate is, I don't know, let's just say it's outside the top 15. I don't want to go out there and do a routine and entertain and realize that I'm not in the hunt and I'm going to give you a half-assed effort. And most of the time, that's what you can see. Don't take my word for it. Go back and look at the tape. Look at the tape from the last 5 shows, and
Right.
you might be lucky. You might be lucky If within 5 competitions, you find 5 guys that give you a real concerted effort. So why not leave it up to the athlete? Hey, number 1, you want to pose? Okay, come on up here. Number 2, you want to pose? Okay, you're going to sit it out. Number 3,
Right?
this is the guys coming out that want to pose, that want to compete for the prize money, right? If you monetize the
Yep.
round, I understand it. But you know what? It doesn't affect my score if I choose to sit it out. Why? Because you just saw me do my compulsories and you've already scored me there. The
And-
posing round is not scored.
correct.
So let's monetize it for entertainment, and not all of our bodybuilders want to entertain.
I can't say I disagree with any of that, but it provides a absolutely perfect segue on because posing seems to be the topic of the week. For now, the second consecutive week, we have seen yet another asinine posing routine, this time in the amateurs, of a guy, and I'm sure, I don't even know his name. I assume he's an NPC athlete. He's a 50-year-old masters competitor. And literally, he's out there just kind of miming, big mouth to the words, and he's jumping around all over on the stage. And this has caught quite some fire in our circles of a debate, which is really kind of interesting to me because there's actually people that defend this. Now, this is on top of the 2 routines we saw just a few weeks ago that you and I were commenting about the one guy who was a pro, actually, I believe, and he was jumping around, didn't even hit any poses. And then we had the men's physique guy, Sean T, I believe his name was. He's supposed to be an internet influencer. I guess he's very popular. Definitely not in our circles, but I'll go with that. And he took kind of a men's physique routine to a whole nother level and kind of doing his thing out there, which none of it's part of the standard. So what I found interesting, Sean, was there was people defending this guy, not Sean T, this new guy. Again, hopefully we got some footage we can throw out there. Pretty much everybody's seen it. They all know what we're talking about. But they're defending the fact that he's out there just jumping around like an idiot, barely hits any poses, really doesn't have any physique. The question is should these people be applauded? Or do we look at it the other way where it's like, well, wait a minute, I kind of take this seriously. This is what we do. This is our sport. I mean, we want to be taken seriously. And then you got this type of activity. Is there a place for this in the sport of bodybuilding?
Well, let's be mindful. There's no rules. I don't recall any rules as it comes to the free posing round. So if I want to go out there and do a headstand, I can. If I want to go out there, yeah, Kai Green did, and he did it very well as he segued into many other very flexible poses for a man of his stature.
Yeah.
That being said, with 0 boundaries, with 0 guidelines, with 0 instruction, with 0 reminders, and they all have athletes meetings prior to the show, it is the wild, wild west in the posing round. So I'm not shocked. I'm not even surprised. I remember Tarek El Gindi saying, I'm not going to reprimand the guy. No one's going to follow that again. There will be others, and there are.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, here we are a week later.
I'm counting on it.
I don't want to show my passion runs deeper than the federation. This is a federational issue. The athlete himself, we don't need to point the fingers at the athlete. What I think is stupid, someone else thinks is brilliant, and they have defenders. We are haters if we see the degradation of posing because we put so much emphasis on it. We value it. It's important for our memory of the past champions that actually put forth an effort. So when we see someone go up there, jump around like a kangaroo, and it looks very foolish and stupid, to that person, you have to consider their feelings, their intentions, the things they've had to overcome. I think it's all BS. I think it's all BS. I don't care about anyone's journey when I'm watching the posing round. I don't care about anyone's point of reference. If it's called the posing round, I'm sitting up in my chair expecting to watch posing. Now, we've seen some variations of posing in Kamali, Melvin Anthony, Darren
That's
Charles.
fine. Sure.
I don't want to leave anybody out here. Big Freddie Smalls.
Yeah.
And they're, Kenny Jones. And there are variations of the degree of which they pull that off. They've all the names I mentioned, by the way, with the exception of Kenny Jones, won a Best Poser award at some point.
Yeah.
But there are other people that try to copy them, and they're very poor imitations. So we can't boo them off the stage trying to copy some of the legends that did it very well. That being said, no one has ever been reprimanded or reeled in for going through a posing routine that didn't include any poses. So as long as that stays in place, we're bound to see a repeat of shenanigans, buffoonery, mockery, and every other adjective you can think of until it becomes totally unacceptable. We have a head judge, we have a stage expediter, we have a sound man, we also have a promoter. There are about 5 lines of defense before that person can get up there and act like a jackass. And if all 5 of those defense mechanisms fail to move, then you can rest assured that the headlines on Instagram and social media from that very popular show are going to be the one of the buffoon that was jumping around like a kangaroo.
Well,
they're going to get the likes and follows.
much like yourself, what I'm concerned most with is the copycats because they see a Sean T out there taking this men's physique, making it into an actual routine type
Yeah.
of thing. And I'm afraid I haven't seen, maybe we just aren't out there enough, but I haven't seen any declarations put out there from the front office. So, maybe they just think it's a one off or it's not going to be a problem. I don't know. What I'm afraid of is now there's going to be, and listen, I'm going to be in Chicago in another day.
Yeah.
I'll know firsthand if this thing is kind of widespread. If all of a sudden there's 10 of these guys, and you can see this coming a mile away, Sean, and I think that's a problem. What I also think is a problem is I saw a few videos, some from a couple of pros actually, defending this guy. Well, the defense was, this is going to tie into our next segment and stuff like that with the whole low T and all that stuff, which is a great segment. But the argument was, well, you don't know what this guy's gone through. You don't know what he's had to overcome. Maybe he lost 200 pounds and he's out there, blah, blah, blah. Here's the problem I got, Sean. One, I don't care about your why, okay? I don't care about your journey. I don't care about what you had to overcome. Okay, you can do all that without getting on a main stage at an NPC show, or even worse, an IFBB show, where you literally are taking down a professional sport and you're taking it down a road that makes it a mockery, that makes it a joke. And people like us that do this for a living and have for many years, and other people that have taken it seriously, we've given a full credit to Aaron Banks, former Olympia champ, for literally going out and saying, no, this is not acceptable. I don't like this. It's unprofessional. I don't think it's cool. And I don't want to see it on a pro stage. It's embarrassing. Does the argument of you don't know what round is what did you have to go through round, Sean? Is that before the symmetry round or after?
We are living in a day and age where everyone's feelings have got to be taken into consideration, where they have forgot why they're there. When you start talking about their why,
Yeah, they're
why
wild.
why are you on a stage? You're on a stage to be critiqued. Those critiques, they cut both ways. Some in praise, some are very critical. The critical critique is for you to improve. That's how I became a better athlete, because I took the good with the bad. And now with the immediate reaction of fans, friends, judges, whatever, haters, you can get a heavy dose of both. Now, someone's saying that this guy looks like an idiot, jumping around like a fool, and this is not acceptable. That's not someone that's hating. That's someone making an observation that the art, the craft, the skill, which bodybuilding was originally founded upon, they're all being removed. And if you take those guardrails off, then get ready for the circus to come to town. So people that know what the posing round is supposed to be are supposed to speak up. They're not being haters, they're being critics. And the ones that are the feelings police, where they're saying take inventory of someone's journey or their why or their emotions, well, there's another competition for that. You can have that and take out the posing round and let them all go to the open mic to tell you how much
Right.
weight they lost, to tell you how many grandchildren they have, how their surgery recovery has come, how their umbilical cord was severed. We don't want to hear your why. We are there to be entertained and to watch posing. That's why it's called the posing round. If
Well,
anything short of posing, I'm not really interested in watching.
if you're not there to compete against, if you're only there to compete against yourself, which is another thing we hear that I absolutely despise. Well, it's me against me. I'm only there to compete against myself. Then why do you go to a competition against other people?
To
It's
be
the
judged.
very essence of competition, right? Is you're going up against, you could be in your living room, Sean, and take pictures all day long and post them online, and everybody will give you great praise about your why and your journey and what you overcame and good for you and all that. And I'd be the first one to sit there with them and go, hey, man, good for this guy or good for this girl. But why would you bring that onto a stage, a national stage? We saw a guy just a couple of years ago that we saw at the Nationals who clearly was a super heavyweight. And I don't say that in a complimentary way. This guy was 100 pounds of chewed bubblegum over contest weight. I don't even know how he qualified, other than he must have been the only one in his class in some show he went into. But he was at the national championships. And it wasn't like, I don't know what he overcame and don't really care. He wasn't even in bad shape. Like he wasn't even that good. And he was there at the nationals.
We're running into a place where the Federation, if they don't take heed of what's happening, just having enough money to compete and step on a stage for me is not enough qualification, okay? Not everybody belongs on the stage because they've overcome, because they're a grandfather, because they, came back from the war, because they got out of a hospital bed, because they've, overcome different obstacles. That's not the essence of competing in bodybuilding. Sure, maybe your individual journey, but when you're on the stage, you don't have an open mic. You know who does have the open mic? The winners. So when you win, you can tell your story however you want. Instagram is great for people telling their own stories and doing their journeys. But when we watch these shows and most of the people pay money, we expect that we're going to a bodybuilding show, not to a dance competition and not to some, I'm not sure who he copied his routine from, but I know that before I got on stage, I looked to see what it was like. I looked in magazines. Okay,
Yeah,
these are
sure.
the poses. I went to a bodybuilding show. I said, that's bodybuilding. But eventually, again, and this is what happened. It was banned. The backflip. It was
Yeah.
banned. Tommy Thorvaldsen
Yeah.
executed the backflip like a gymnast. Rolly Winkler
Yeah.
executed the backflip like a gymnast.
We've seen a
These
few.
were guys who?
We've seen a few over the
Yeah,
years, and luckily
yeah.
nobody's gotten killed that we know.
Well, no. And so the reason you would get rid of the backflip is why? Somebody died.
Somebody's going to get killed.
Someone had to die
Yeah.
before the Federation said, hey guys, no more backflips. And the guy in Africa that did the backflip in a guest posing routine broke his neck and died. And so now the next thing was getting rid of swords. Remember this Excalibur swords you can
Oh
get for
yeah,
winning
yeah,
a contest?
yeah, yeah.
The Federation was real quick to get rid of those things, probably because, like I said in the past,
The liability.
some of the judges are open targets for people to take their frustrations out on the results. So they got rid of the swords. What is it going to take to get rid of, or at least institute, posing is posing, dancing is dancing? It's one or the other. Choose your poisoning. But we can't sit here and justify guys making a mockery of the posing round and then come up with an excuse to say that you don't know their journey. You don't understand what they've had to overcome. I don't care what they had to overcome. If they don't know how to pose, they don't need to be in the posing round. So my proposal is, for those of you that don't want to pose, don't go on the stage in the posing round. You can do your compulsories. If you want to dance, sign up for the dance competition. They have them all over the country. My daughter was in that stuff. I used to travel with her all the time.
Yep.
You're in the wrong sport.
Agreed. I don't have a lot of compassion, I guess, for lack of a better word, for these people because I don't think it's the place and the time. Again, I think it's a mockery. I remember when I was a kid, I was 16, 17 years old, and there was a kid locally in Rochester that competed. And you could tell he wasn't all there. He was a little, touched in terms of, his mental capacity and stuff, but he seemed to want to be a bodybuilder. But he wasn't in any shape. And they let him compete. And I remember kind of being pissed off because even as a teenager, I took it very seriously. I wanted to compete and I wanted to compete at a high level, and both of us eventually ended up at the teenage nationals. I mean, and, back then that was a very prestigious title to have en route to trying to get to the pros. Right. But I remember it's like, why are they even letting this kid compete? He didn't diet. He didn't have any muscle. He didn't have anything. He just literally went through the. Now, and again, it's like, you know what? I guess you can look at that as inspirational in some manner, but they don't allow this in any other sport that I can think of. From a team sport to an individual sport. When was the last time you were watching something on TV, Sean, and you saw some jackass break into something else other than the actual sport? Like they went out for gymnastics and then they just started. Well, actually, we did see it. Here's a great example. If you remember, Sean, and I'm sure you do, the Olympics. Just a few years ago, where that chick from Australia, or wherever it was, went out there doing the break dance, and she didn't know what to do. She was literally just rolling around and made a fool of herself. And that is the Olympics, and she got just absolutely torched for it.
And her country. Mind you, there are different divisions created for different types of individuals. We have the wheelchair divisions for the handicapped people.
Yeah.
They're competing against like-minded people. I don't want to say disadvantaged because everyone has a different story in that wheelchair division. It's admirable, but the playing field is level. You're not going to see a Special Olympics guy put on the track and field up against Usain Bolt.
Right.
They're not going to be running around in the NFL and the NBA. You know why? Those are the highest of the high. They're the highest paid athletes. They are the best specimens in the world. And it just sends the wrong message unless you're going to make a special guest appearance. Promoters have that latitude, but just being 65 years old and a grandfather, well, we have a division for you too. It's called the Masters Division. However, when you get up there, you're going to have to do what all the other masters do. That's hit the mandatory poses and do a bodybuilding posing routine. Anything outside those parameters, I'm not making excuses for you. I'm getting the hook. I'm pulling you off. I'm taking the music. I'm shutting it down. I'm turning off the lights. I'm having my expediter remove you from the stage
Right.
if you're not hitting bodybuilding poses. It's a
Well,
bodybuilding show.
well, listen, we've seen them cut music off when there's been explicit lyrics, things that really
100%.
aren't right. And they cut that
Yeah.
off in 2 seconds. And the guy's looking over at me at the thing with the, hey, what happened? And of course, I'm looking back like I got a turntable in front of me. And it's
Yeah.
like, and I know exactly why they cut them off, right? It's like, listen, bro, a few too many F bombs, N bombs, everything. This is not the place. And I think I look at it in the same vein. It's like, look, if somebody starts dancing around like an idiot, I think you do the same thing. I think you cut the music, you
Yeah.
get them off, off and say, look, bud, listen, you want to go back and try it again, or let's just call it a day here. But I think I have found the reason why, Sean. That's really what everybody wants to know is why. Here, you want to know your why? That's why we're here to explain it to you. And Sean, I got to be honest, I'm getting a little sick of being right all the time.
I feel your pain.
Just 2 weeks ago, you and I sat here and we kind of half joked, wondering what happened to all the testosterone in these guys. Why are they so whiny? Why can't they take critique? Why are they getting on our ass, about how we're coming down on, the old guys, and they critique us too hard, all that. And we kind of half joked that I said, Sean, I think maybe they're spiking the testosterone, or they're switching it out with estrogen, and maybe these guys got low testosterone, like there's something going on. I'll be damned if just this week a study came out in the Journal of Endocrinology. A study came out with 1,667 men, 20 to 40 years old. This is an actual study. This isn't stuff we're making up. And what the study concluded, Sean, this is amazing, is that the average testosterone today of a 20-year-old is equal to what a 70-year-old, that's 70, a 70-year-old had in the 1970s. The testosterone ratio in men has declined every decade since. That, my friend, is a big problem.
Did it give one or two examples as to why that is?
Well, there are some reasons why, which I did look into. One is foods, the way they're manufactured, the way they're processed. There's actually,
remember when it comes to food, also it's about choices. But go ahead.
Of course, and that all comes in too, because being overweight greatly adds to that. Sleep apnea adds to that. The BPA in water bottles adds. Like there's 10 different things that have kind of led to the decline in testosterone in males. Now,
let me give you two really quick.
Sure.
I didn't read the study, but I'm making an observation. I'm a child of the 70s, right? I came up in the 70s, born in 65 like yourself. We didn't have the access to the digital stuff. We played outside. Every sport that came around, my parents put us in those. So if it was baseball season, we're playing baseball. Basketball season, basketball. Football season, football. We
did the
boxed,
same,
we wrestled, we were on the diving team, we went swimming, we rode bikes, right? We did dirt bikes and BMX bikes. Everything that we did seemed to be outdoors. I mean, we didn't have
It's all
the
physical.
video machine. When the video games came along in the 80s, you had to go to an arcade. You didn't have them at home. The first home machine, I think, was Atari or whatever, and it's Pong.
I had that.
It wasn't enough to keep you indoors if you were an athlete, if you're active.
That's right.
All of that running around as teenagers. I mean, we matured faster. Our testosterone ran higher. We were hungry more. And of course, you started lifting weights when?
Jeez. What year or what age? 12 years old. 1978, bro.
But it's not a trick question. I know how old you were. You started before me, but I was doing all the other sports before I got to weights.
Yeah, of course. Me too.
At 17. Yeah, at 16, somewhere in there, I got to weights and was competing at 17. All of those things attribute to your spike in your testosterone. I remember I was in the locker room as a sophomore or junior, and you look over and you see a guy that's fully haired, full hair on the front, hair on the back. Maturity level was so much. Now what you have are millions of reasons not to leave home. Parents don't let their kids play out front. Parents don't let you go. They don't let you take your bike to the park. Parents don't let you go stay over the night at other friends' homes. Parents lock you in you can't leave the yard, right? You need permission. As a matter of fact, they don't even want you out there driving your car when you actually have your driver's license. So what do? You turn inward. You're on the computer. You're on your cell phone. You're on Instagram. You're on TikTok. Everything is protected because the outside world is where danger, not fun, danger. So if I put you into an activity, you go to that activity and you come home. Your circle of friends are not all the neighbors on the block anymore. Most people lock their doors and put up ring cameras around the home and make sure that their kids are fearful to leave. And a lot of parents now work from home, so they're monitoring their children's behavior. There's no individuality. These teenagers are soft. By the time they become teenagers, they have a very small circle of friends. They have very little life experience. They're not rough. They're not. There's no stub toes. There's no football in the streets. There's no pickup basketball at the park. So I imagine that the sedentary lifestyle of a teenager, by comparison to the 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
has lowered your drive, has lowered your testosterone in your development.
Well, this is again, we keep looking for the answer. We keep looking for something that kind of pops up that explains why. People keep asking, why are the physiques today not as good as back in the day? Why were the physiques so much better back then? What was any different? And now, even in the responses, again, I just look at this as an example. Here's the guy that goes out there with absolutely no physique at all. Barely looks like he's ever
Yes,
even been in the
zero.
gym. That in itself is one thing, right? Then starts dancing around like a damn fool.
How old
And
is
he
he?
actually gets applauded by it by some of the actual pros that are out there. And I think to myself, you got to be kidding me. Like, why would you endorse this? And the answer is, well, again, you don't know what he went through. You don't know what he had to overcome and all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, how soft. No wonder you guys can't take critique. No wonder you think we're hard on you and we're being unfair and it's unnecessary and all these other videos. And now I really wonder if this has contributed, Sean. Are the guys today, I'm talking about the pros as we always do, are they soft by proxy of they have a naturally lower testosterone? Now, listen, I know what's coming from everybody, so you guys can just save it right now. You can take all the testosterone you want externally, okay? That doesn't mean, and when I say external, I mean it's not your own, okay, that you're built with, okay? There's a big difference between importing testosterone and what you naturally have amongst you. Big difference, okay? So that just, you can save it right there. Me and Sean ain't scientists, okay, but we know enough to know what we're talking about when it comes to this stuff. But can that be a contributing factor, Sean, as to why we have to keep having the same conversation and why these guys are so soft and just I don't know, girly, I guess.
Well, in bodybuilding in general, and now we go back to our day and age because that's all the point of reference we have. And the guys competing today, when you're our age, you'll be sounding exactly like us. The majority of the guys that were competing with us were all started as teenagers. We started building our bodies as
Yeah.
teenagers. This is just off the top of my head. Jay Cutler, teen national champion. I believe he won his class. Branch Warren, teen national champion.
Chance.
Chris Cormier, teenage USA champion. Eddie Robinson, teenage
Yeah.
champion.
Keep going, yeah.
Myself, teenage champion. Bob Chicks, teenage heavyweight 1985 national champion. We were all competing as teenagers, which meant we were busting our ass in the gym, disciplined on a diet, suffering, competing, being judged, critiqued, and analyzed against some of the best teenagers in the country. And myself around the world as I went on as a 20-year-old to win the Junior World Championship. You would be hard pressed to find a competitive pro today that has a teenage resume as a competitor, let alone a national champion or a teenage national champion. It doesn't happen. These guys are starting later in the game, and that toughness, that base that was built for the bodybuilders, they'd say, why were we so much better?
Yeah.
Probably because Lee Haney was a teenage national champion in '79.
Yeah.
Okay, won eight Olympias, retired at 32 years old. That happened because he started lift. He was a national champion in '79, which means he started before he won. Rich Gaspari turned pro at 20, 21 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
Shane Demora. Yeah.
Shane Demora was the youngest at 20 years old. Dallas McCarver. We don't have the same resume on the current crop of guys competing into their fees. We're talking, there's a lot of athletes competing. Very few have a teenage resume. So that means they missed some formidable developmental years where testosterone was plentiful in the body naturally. So artificially in their 20s, early
Right.
30s, here comes this influx of testosterone, but what they're lacking is the foundation and the base that was built as teenagers. Fundamentally, we had a head start on those guys so that by the time we were in our late 20s, early 30s, we were ready to get out. Whereas now, these guys are just getting started. So I think there's a
Yeah.
base that they missed as teenagers.
Well,
But
and another thing.
feelings wise, you're 100% right. Feelings wise, today's athletes are just not mentally prepared for the critique and the criticism. And I think that's largely part and parcel to the social media involvement where people can pile on, and their coaching crew that tries to insulate them from any negativity.
Well, Generation Low T. I think we found a new title. That said, another thing I brought up on a different podcast just a week ago. I trained from 12 until 20 natural. Okay, never took anything. Didn't even diet for shows back then. Just wasn't necessary, really. It wasn't even in the cards. Okay, so there was a natural base, again, a natural testosterone that was built and used for the foundation of which I would go on to compete. And I'm only using myself as this example.
It's 8
But it was
years.
fairly widespread back then. Another thing I see today and a big difference is one, like you just mentioned, the average age is up at least 10 to 15 years. You don't see anybody turning pro, at least not in open bodybuilding, in their early 20s anymore. It's in your 30s and sometimes even more into these masters divisions, which is ridiculous and a whole other thing. But they already start a little bit later, but they also start on the gas. I don't know how many times I've seen these guys. They don't have a year in them. They're already fully on. And let me tell you something. When we say on the gas, it's not like they're kind of eking in and, well, let me just try a little bit of test or D-ball or something. I mean, full blown. They got some trainer out there who's just a glorified drug dealer, and they're just shoving it. They're on insulin. I mean, I read some of these things online, Sean. Here's a guy competing in his first show, going into Novice Mr. Main Street, and he's talking about his cycle, and he's talking about all the gear. And I think to myself, bro, you don't even have a base, but no wonder you're messed up and your physique looks like garbage because you have literally no base.
Well, I don't want to look like a walking contradictory, but my shirt does say "Get on the juice," and this is it's not the same juice that you're thinking about
Yeah,
by
that
me.
was a bad pick for today's topic, Sean.
But that being said, um, this is definitely we're living in a time where no one thinks they can do this by themselves, right? So an artist doesn't pick up a pen with the backdrop on a canvas and think to myself, Bob, can you give me a spot over here? I'm going to start my art that I see in my head, and I want to know what you think. Should I go right or should I go left? Should I use the red one or the blue one? An artist looks at the canvas and paints in silence. And when he's done, what does he do? He comes down to the bottom and he signs his name. When someone walks in the room and they see the painting on the wall, they don't think, how many people did it take to paint this thing? They look
Right?
down. They see the John Hancock and they know exactly who painted it. And all the detail in all of its heat, all of its majesty, is done by that one artist. And that's why he's considered an artist, because it was in here. He put it on the canvas for us to see what was in his head, and he singularly takes responsibility for what he built. When we were teenagers, all we had were points of reference. We looked at magazines, we watched videos, we go to shows, but we went in the gym and we did it ourselves and tried to figure the shit out. And then when we got to a certain level, we sought out second opinions and maybe a more trained eye, maybe somebody that can guide us along the way. But we still did the work. And what we're talking about now with the elusive pro cards being handed out to every person over the age of 60 is that as soon as they get to their second or third chapter in life where they can afford to eat, sleep, and train, first thing they want to do when they want to be a pro is get on the gas. And when I say get on the gas, peptides are legal. The HRT is
Yeah.
legal. Marijuana used to be illegal. I can order it right now in 5 different flavors. It's legal. So no one's frowning at the fact that I'm in my 50s. I have natural low testosterone, and I can get medicinal testosterone from my drug dealer at the gym. And so you know what? Because I want to compete, my testosterone's naturally low. Let me go get some drugs and bring my testosterone up. Oh, by the way, I'll try that insulin because my trainer told me combine this with the insulin. And this guy over here said the growth hormone might increase my appetite so I can eat more. And now I'm 50 some odd years old, gassed up on God only knows what, looking like a bag of donuts. And I got $175 in my pockets that allows me to go and stand on a stage that used to be hollowed ground.
Yeah.
There's no guardrails. Now all you need is money. And you can get on that stage, you can get the drugs you want, and no one tells you no. I don't know of anybody that's been refused a pro card or an NPC card if they have the ability to pay for it, let alone get kicked off of a stage because they look like a bag of donuts.
Well, one more component to this whole thing, which I was giving us some thought, which is the actual training itself. Now, you and I grew up in an era that was predominantly free weights. Yes, we weren't that archaic. We did have some machinery, and there was some decent stuff that was around back then. But by and large, it was mostly free weights: benches, incline squats, declines, bent over rows.
Basics.
Dumbbell
Basics.
curls. I mean, they were literally basics of the basics. And if you happen to be in an area that was decent and had a decent gym, you had a little bit better access. But I think one of the best and worst things to ever come along was hammer equipment. And I don't say that to call them out personally. I mean, listen, I used to love hammer equipment, but I
Too
bring that
late.
up, Sean, for a good reason. And I only use hammers as an example. Any leverage equipment, okay, was, again, it's great if you knew how to train, but it's also one of the worst things to come along, because what that did is it enabled people that didn't even have a base of muscle to wander over to the hammer bench press or whatever and put up 3-4 plates fairly easily. I mean, you could put up a good amount of, because everything's built on a teeter-totter, right? You
Yeah.
put them on and you could throw on 2, 3, 4, even if you're just a ranked novice. And I think a lot of this contributed to a lack of better physiques. Like there was a discussion the other day I saw with Jay Cutler and manager Matt, and I might have been Milos or somebody or other on his podcast. And he was asking the question, where have the striations gone? This was an open topic of, and they were talking about the Olympia. They were talking about the top Olympian guys. And their question was, Jay's question was, I'm not seeing any bicep striations. Like, when was the last time you saw somebody with a split bicep? He says, I had it, Ronnie had it, he went down a list. Then they went down a list of the top Olympians, and they only came up with a name or two. Howdy, they were kind of on the fence. They think he had some. Samson, no. Derek, no. This one, no. That one, no. Nick, I think he got good credit. He's got great arms. But there was only a couple of guys, Sean. And the answer is well, one, does the equipment or lack thereof of knowledge of training, does that contribute? And does the fact that these guys are loading up on individual body parts, which really wasn't done back in that day. And I think that actually contributes more. These guys are starting to look like balloon animals.
Yeah, there's a lot of site injections that are taking place. I remember Nasser took it to a different degree. Nasser was a guy
Very
who was
bad in
second.
the end days.
Yeah, he was second in the world. And in the end, he couldn't make the top 10 of the Night of Champions. And no one told him to pump his brakes, and never was he actually penalized. Like, here's the reason we march you down: your shoulders, your biceps, your
Yeah.
calf. He wasn't told directly why you're coming in lower. We could clearly see the anomalies taking place. And that's not speaking ill of the dead. It is an observation that no one paid attention to while it was happening. And it should have been addressed when it was happening. When Dorian Yates was winning with torn body parts, there should have been some points taken away and stopped so that you don't have to accept an incomplete physique. It's not acceptable. When you see the stomach bloat from one of our great champions, you have to take the title away. I remember Sean Roden and Phil Heath, very hotly contested contest. I was commentating on it. I watched the playback, and I thought at prejudging, Sean Roden's going to beat Phil Heath because he's got better control of his midsection and his core. Phil Heath didn't talk to me for about a year because I was talking about a friend. I was talking about the gift. I was talking about a 7-time Mr. Olympia as if he wasn't going to win, and there's no way he can win because he has no control of his stomach. It's not a knock. It's not a diss. It was a critique. It turned out that the judges actually did the right thing. But we're living in a time where I think the judges need more transparency as to why they're knocking people down. They should tell them why they're knocking them down. So zero tolerance.
I got no
The
problem with
suspicious shoulder, the side injections, the suspicious shoulders. Listen, if Stevie Wonder can see it, the judges have a better seat. So I shouldn't have to point these things out after the fact. But if the judges aren't going to start calling these guys out for what the commentators are witnessing, don't be surprised when the commentators tell you what we're seeing and we're not being filtered, because we don't want to tolerate it. We don't want to see the escalation or the acceptance of these anomalies taking away from the beauty of bodybuilding. If the
that.
judges won't do it, the commentators will. And you have to be mindful, the power of a podcast is powerful. Milos, Jay Cutler, Lee Haney, Tony Freeman, and us. We're finding our voices because we don't want to see the degradation of what's happening on these bodybuilding stages, and the judges are going to be held accountable.
Well, something we said again on a previous episode, and I specifically said, when I think we actually used it as a title, when the freaks start running the show, when they start getting rewarded, it's over. And I say that for very good reason. People think we're being a little over the top, or, we're just, being those old guys again, right? Listen, people, remember this right now. You can mark this, okay? You can put it in your notes. We've already seen this take place with women's bodybuilding. We've seen it. We saw it rise. We saw it was very popular. We saw it was on its own, self-sufficient, had their own magazines, had their own coverage, had a fan base. It was huge. And once it went to the freaks, once the bodies became too masculine, once it became out of bounds, so to say, it died. And it died quickly. Now you say, well, that's women. And I say, well, listen, we have already seen signs right now. We have classic physique, which arguably, and I can listen, I'll come back and do a report when I come back from Chicago, but I can guarantee right now, Sean, without even seeing a list, that there are going to be way more competitors, NPC and IFBB, enrolled in classic than in open. I'm all over the world with doing shows still. I don't do as many as I used to. I do a lot of the big ones now, but I've still out enough, Sean, to see the numbers. Numbers of open bodybuilders in NPC shows has drastically declined.
Yes, it has.
Conversely, of course, numbers have increased in classic. Now, why is that? Because that's what the guys want to more look like. Why is Chris Bumstead 20 times more popular than your reigning and current Mr. Olympia by terms of numbers, by terms of social media? He's got 20 million followers. The top 10 open bodybuilders combined don't have 20 million followers. Now, what does this tell us, Sean? It says, well, the people are actually speaking, much like you're saying, the podcasters are speaking out, and legends in the game, experts in the game, are starting to find their voice and speak out. And it's because of these type of things. It's like, because you have to take a look at what it's going to do long term. If the only two things that are going to start getting judged and open is conditioning and muscularity, and everything else kind of goes by the wayside, and they say, oh, that's classic, we're in trouble.
Well, I can tell you real quick, they'll come out after a competition to explain the contest results. But what's not happening is nobody's coming out to explain what's not going to be tolerated. There needs to be discipline. Right now, there's no discipline. Right now, there's no direction. And bodybuilding can cannibalize itself, because I'll tell you what, if I'm bringing my son to a bodybuilding show and I'm watching a guy jump around like a kangaroo, I don't want my kid up there doing that crap. Number two, I also don't want my kid up there with all these different anomalies. If these anomalies are going to be tolerated and accepted and then rewarded, I wouldn't want my son or family member or friend to participate. When bodybuilding starts to cannibalize itself because we want to just see the freaks and all the good physiques disappear, bodybuilding will disappear. We saw it happen with the women, just like you said. And we are not safe if we reward and don't penalize some of the guys that are pushing the envelope. Someone has to pump the brakes. We need to hear from our federational leaders. We need to hear from our judges. These athletes need reminders, and the promoters need to make sure that they remind the athletes, if you have an athletes meeting, if you have a press conference, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. I don't know what the rule book says, but I haven't seen a rule book in years. But I can tell you what, it seems like whatever the athletes are doing, they don't have a rule book either, because they're doing whatever the hell they want. So I would love to see something come in the form of some video reminders. Look, if I'm going to the Federation website, if I'm going to the Federation's Instagram, I would like to see some reminders of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Show me some examples of what you don't want to see. Show me some examples of what's acceptable. Listen, when Fit Model was created, we know why it was created. I'll let you answer it really quick.
Well, everything gets created because of a necessity, because of a need.
Okay.
Women's physique was created out of necessity when women's bodybuilding fell.
Right.
When, we started seeing a decline in men's open or a decline in the physiques, classic physique was added. And now Fit Model has been added as a result of bikini getting a little bit, too much close, let's just say closer to
Too
figure.
much.
So
now, yeah.
one thing,
Now that
spawns another.
But now that they've created the new divisions, because one division begets the next division, we have nowhere to go, right? Either men's bodybuilding is going to strive and survive, or it's going to go the way of the 8-track, the way of the cassette tape, the way of the payphone. There are not going to be a lot of people left if you leave the bodybuilders to their own devices to cannibalize the sport. We can ill afford one of our champions to go down for the count.
Well,
and right now, for a lot of athletes, we're seeing the roosters come home to roost. It's a lot of latent injuries, a lot of latent illnesses, a lot of latent sickness from bodybuilders that were putting themselves at risk. I don't want to see anybody that's presently competing succumb to anything, because from 2000 to now, man, there's been a whole lot of tragedy in the sport of bodybuilding. I remember Dallas McCarver went up to pose for Jim Mannion. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks before the Arnold Classic, and I thought to myself, why would you go out of shape, pale, and pasty, and then put it on YouTube, and then not expect to get torn up? I mean, he wasn't ready to perform for the president, right? Like, if I'm going to pose for the president and get a private audience, I'm not going to make it public unless I look like $1 million. I mean, Joe Weider would have sent me home, and Dallas struggled through that. And I don't want to see bodybuilders go out on the stage and struggle ever. I want it to look effortlessly. I want it to look like you did your homework. I want you to be healthy. And when you go and you put yourself at harm's risk just because you can, or because a trainer is giving you something that they think will take you to the next level, the federation needs to remind these athletes it is a dangerous game to play, and not everybody gets to the finish line. But we need instruction, we need discipline, and we need to call stuff out when it happens. We are 3 weeks into these posing routines that are ridiculous, and every talking head with a podcast is talking about it, but the federation. Is it acceptable? As far as I know, right now it is. We're going to see more of it.
Well, listen, I am all for adding divisions, making more opportunity for people to get involved and have a place. I'm all for it. However, judging wise, that is what has to be kind of kept in context. You have to have criteria that it's followed. And if it's not followed, it becomes, like you said, the Wild West of just. I actually heard a judge, an actual judge, say just this last week that they didn't really care about the weight. We're talking about open bodybuilding, okay?
Yeah.
They didn't really care about the waistlines. Was anybody talking about the waistlines with Dorian? Was anybody talking about the waistlines with this guy or with that guy or Ronnie in '03? And I thought to myself, wow, that is an amazing thing to say. One, from a judge. Two, that's the very essence. And this particular guy wasn't even around back in the day, Sean, to know about the belly band, to know that it was a huge problem back in the day because guys were coming out like the Dorians, like the JP Fuchses, like other people, and they were presenting a midsection that was anything but great. And it didn't have a big impact, and the sport looked like it was going in the wrong direction, that they had to kind of pull it back a little bit. You only do that by putting the placings. And it brought up a great point that I wanted to get your opinion on, Sean, because our good friend Rubio is one of our fellow Panada peoples and a great guy, just a great soul, really good person, okay? But he's about as a freak as it gets, right? Like, I don't even know. I haven't met few people, and we've known a lot, bro. We've seen Nasser, and we've seen Greg Kovacs, and we've seen this guy. Rubio, I think, is probably the biggest freak out of all of them, even over like a Dillette, because he's got body parts I just haven't really seen with anybody. But he just won a couple shows, qualified for his first Olympia. We'll assume he's going to be there. Initially, I thought, all right, listen, I mean, he's put together a little funky, he's Nextzilla, all that stuff. Probably be in the third call out. But then I actually caught myself and I said, well, wait a minute here. Given what I'm hearing from people out there, given the parameters of what we're talking about, is Rubio a first call out guy? Like, could he? I mean, listen, let's just call it the way it is, right? Listen, you like freaks? He says this guy and this judge said that that's what the people want. They want the freaks. So I thought to myself, I wonder if Rubio will be in the first call. He's the biggest freak out there. He makes Nick look like a normal guy out there. He makes Nick look like Bob Paris.
Yeah, the problem with that, Bob, and I've said it before, when you have the same judges, you get the same results. So I don't think he'll be in that first call out. I think he deserves to be on the Olympia stage based on the guys that have qualified.
Absolutely, sure.
He qualified not once, but he qualified twice. That being said, it's still hallowed ground, that stage, and the judges on that level will make sure that they send a message to the direction of which bodybuilding is headed. So I don't know that he gets the first call out, but I imagine he could definitely be somewhere between 10th and 6th place based on the people that are actually qualified. Initially, I would have had him out of the top 10. But now that he's been able to pull off 2 victories in a row, and with the depth of field and with what the judges are rewarding, he stands a very good chance, a better chance than I did when I did my first Olympia, which was 13th, because you don't have a lot of genetic freaks. There's not a lot of deep talent on that Olympia stage. And again, I've said this before, including with Nick Walker, when he didn't compete in the Olympia, I said, hey, be careful what you wish for. The pressure of getting on that Olympia stage sometimes will drown you.
Sure.
It didn't serve very well for Cedric McMillan, who had all of the genetic gifts when it came to showtime. Yeah. We watched Logan Franklin not even make it out of the starting blocks and get on stage getting ready for the Olympia because people do stupid shit at the end.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes you right out of the hunt. But the pressure, the magnitude of the day, the weekend coming to America for Rubio, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be, holy crap, I'm here. It can go really, really good or really, really bad, the same way it did for Greg Kovacs when he showed up at the Arnold Classic and everybody was waiting for his arrival. He fell flat on his face, and he was the biggest thing that we had ever seen at the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, he wasn't he was Frankenstein. I mean, honestly, like, that was not a good physique.
But he was a pro. He was a pro.
But, yeah, I mean, listen, he did turn pro somehow back then. And that was just not good. But it does bring up a great subject, though, because like the topic at hand, which again, we love going back and forth with Milos on, because he still thinks that, if we bring back the symmetry around, it's going to change the physique somehow and all that. And it's like, that doesn't seem to be an emphasis in men's open these days, right? Listen,
No.
we all openly debate, why the guy standing like this? What's with the motorcycle pose, right? That's what's been making the rounds the last 2-3 weeks. And the answer is look, that's up to the judges. It's not, you had a great point, Sean, because listen, we love Milos. We'll have him on the show and we can have some fun with all that. But I don't want to go round and round with whether that should be scored or not. We're just beating a dead horse. But it's not up to us whether we think it's worth anything. It's up to the judges. Big Steve and whoever's out there has every ability to have a microphone in their hand, and they call out whatever they want to call out. Listen, I've heard Steve 1,000 times. No elbows, guys. No elbows, right? No this. Get back behind the line.
Back on the line. Back on the line.
Spread out, right? The whole, knock that off. Listen, Steve runs a tight ship out there. If he doesn't like this, then he has every ability to, guys, put your arms down at your sides.
I've never heard him say that, ever,
No.
not once.
So, and listen, that's fine. They can judge it however they want. But that tells me there's not a big emphasis on that particular round. We've also established many times over, there's no emphasis at all on the individual posing round for good reason, because you're out there on your own, whether you're doing the robot or whether you're doing a Sean Ray Classic routine. Kind of makes no difference because you're on your own. You're not in comparison with anybody. Yeah. So that reduces it to two things and two things only: muscularity and conditioning.
And condition, correct.
And that opens up the door to every freak in this world, because if that's all the two things that you're looking at.
Rubio's in the top 5.
And people say, well, where's all those other attributes? And I'm here to give you the answer. It's called classic physique.
Yes.
That's why it's popular.
100%.
That's why Chris Bumstead is where he is and who he is. And have you ever seen anybody in classic standing like this?
No.
No, right?
No, but I will tell you, the reason we see them stand the way they stand is because the Federation allows it to happen. There's no correction. There's no direction. There's no education. So gone are the days where we copied the people that came before us, which were some of the world's best from the 70s, right? Like we came up behind Arnold, behind Zane, behind Samir, and we copied those people. And the people that came up behind us were copying us. And now I don't know what the hell they're looking at, but they're all copying each other, and there's not a judge out there giving correction. The Federation is not issuing correction. And so we're liable to see anything. But like you said, I'm 100% with you. These contests come down to one thing, two things: muscularity and condition. If you go there expecting anything else, shape, symmetry, posing, presentation, you're gonna be disappointed on a million different levels. Don't go there expecting to get entertained. Don't go there expecting to see class and beauty. If you want that, it's in the classic. So bodybuilding has now become reduced to muscularity and conditioning, and then just go ahead and give a pose down and give them the awards. It would make the night so much faster, because that's what you're telling us. That's what it's become. That's all it is.
I think as a sport, we need to be very careful where we're going with that. I'd like to see that kind of more better defined for these different divisions, because I think, and listen, I know, listen, maybe we're being extreme, maybe we're not, maybe we've just been around a while and we've seen it. But when I think open could go the way of the dinosaur within the next 5-6 years, if those parameters are not put in place. I think we have to kind of stick with our guns when it comes to the cornerstones of bodybuilding: shape, symmetry, proportion, grace, presentation. Although I think those do count. I think they should count. Or, like we've said, bro, once it goes freak show, I think you're rolling the dice. But that's going to wrap it up, Sean, for another great edition of The Voice of Bodybuilding. As usual, guys, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Get yourself some of that right there, a little ISO surge. And don't forget, it's Christmas in July. Get yourself some egg whites. And you're still cracking eggs individually, guys. Come on. I mean, you can get these in gallon jugs. Gallons. I go through gallons of these things, and they are the best thing in the world. It's just egg whites, bro. It's not a powder. It's not some form of. They're just egg whites, okay? So get yourself some. And again, you got something free coming from me, courtesy of. So that's going to wrap it up. Guys, as always, it's me and Sean on the comments, and we appreciate you. Come one, come all, whether you love us or hate us, get on there. Yes, we will answer you back, probably with a smart-ass answer, because that's what we do. And that's going to wrap it up. For Sugar Sean, I'm Bob Chick. Yo, we out of here. Yeah.